7 secrets of the gut you definitely didn't know. In this video, you'll learn how improving your gut health can boost your immunity. First, and second, to get high-quality energy. And watch this video till the end to find out how improving your gut can make you happier. Your gut is your immunity. You need to understand that 80% of our immunity is the gut. Why did this happen? We consume non-sterile food. Just imagine, you cut yourself, you cut your hand, right? Now just take a piece of, I don't know, a burger, wrap it up and open it in a couple of days. What will happen to your wound? It will get very inflamed. It will start to fester, and to prevent the same thing from happening, the intestine has a huge number of barriers, and the first barrier is several kilograms, about 2 to 3 kilograms of so-called lymphoid tissue. These lymph nodes are super filters, cradles for lymphocytes, prevent toxins and waste products from entering our body, and so on and so forth. In other words, everything that harms our body. And this is the function it performs. This is exactly what lymphoid tissue and lymph nodes do, and the largest concentration of lymph nodes is found in our intestines. How a person destroys their immune system every day thanks to their gut. When you consume large amounts of fast food, sodas, ultra-processed foods, preservatives, and so on, at the same time you drink little water, eat few vegetables, and move very little. In the final analysis of this biological process, this results in a situation where the lymphoid tissue is gradually gathering and storing all of the harmful substances produced during metabolic breakdown. Metabolic waste products, processed food byproducts, and on top of that, our main defenders, lymphocytes, mature in these lymph nodes. The lymphocytes start to age and linger there. As a result, our army of immune cells, our fighters, ends up consisting of these elderly, almost retired lymphocytes. You see these old lymphocytes. That's exactly why in elderly people, or elderly in quotes you could say, meaning after the age of 50, a large number of various chronic diseases begin to progress. A person simply ends up living with these illnesses all the time, constantly moving from one disease state to another, or sometimes never leaving that disease state at all. And why is that? Well, because at 30 they didn't take care of their immunity, didn't look after their gut, which ultimately led to such serious diseases as coronary heart disease, strokes, heart attacks, cancer. There's no end to it. You need to understand that our future depends on what we eat. And if you give your body poor quality fuel, then eventually the body starts to break down. It's like pouring, I don't know, pig urine into your car's gas tank. How do you think it will run? That's pretty much what happens to your body, just not as obviously. It's important to understand that especially our lymphatic system, especially our immune system, in fact all our organs and systems, are very resilient and have a powerful, strong reserve of durability. Consuming nutritionally deficient and highly processed food items is ultimately one of the primary contributing elements and significant drivers in the development of long-term chronic health conditions. The second secret is that our complex human intestines contain about 2 kilograms of diverse bacterial species. Kilograms of bacteria.
Wow.
Why is this important? Because without bacteria, we simply wouldn't be able to digest any food at all. That is, everything that enters our body absolutely must be processed by our bacteria. For example, there are laboratory mice, specially bred called notobiotes, which live in absolutely sterile conditions. They are needed for various experimental studies, and if you give these mice a piece of ordinary, say, regular cheese or regular food, then literally within a few hours, these mice will die from generalized sepsis, that is, from inflammation. That's exactly why when a person takes antibiotics, what they're doing is killing bacteria. And I'm not advocating for this in any way. Yes, not to take antibiotics, because there are situations when they really are necessary. But unfortunately, our doctors and people themselves are also at fault. For example, you get a runny nose, go to the store, go to the pharmacy, and just buy them over the counter. You take these antibiotics, and it seems like you feel better.
That's not how it works.
But antibiotics kill. What is an antibiotic after all? Yes, let's break down this word. Anti means against, bios means life, so against life. So when you take an antibiotic, you kill both bad and good bacteria. That's why whenever you take antibiotics, you absolutely must also take probiotics. That is, capsules that contain beneficial bacteria, at the very least lactobacilli and bifidobacteria. Mice by themselves are actually very friendly, at least laboratory mice are. Some of them were given massive doses of antibiotics to kill off all the gut microflora, and yes, they became sociopaths they turned antisocial, would hide in the corner of the cage, and wouldn't interact with anyone. But as soon as their gut microflora was restored, they would return to the group and interact with the other mice. The third secret is Paneth cells. These are cells of the innate immune system, and what's most interesting is that their number is quite limited. For example, there's a study showing that with a Western diet, when you eat fast food, the number of Paneth cells becomes much lower. So you're basically killing off your innate immune cells, all thanks to this kind of food. So before you take your child to a place like McDonald's, be sure to think about this. You probably remember from school that classmate who was always sick like 35 days out of 30. If you had a classmate who was often sick and ate all sorts of unhealthy food, then give this video a like. Now let me tell you about a very interesting structure called Peyer's patches. In fact, Peyer's patches are the source of the immune response. Why? Because on the surface of these patches, on these villi, there are so-called macrophages, or M cells as they're also called, located there. If you compare them to an army, you could say they're in the front line. Why? Because these are the cells that work on the front lines. What do? When some foreign agent gets in, they simply grab it and completely devour it, then move on into our lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system can also be called the center of information technology, where everything goes to the center for information exchange. This macrophage simply holds a fragment on its receptor. It then passes this fragment of the ingested bacterial or viral agent to highly specialized cells called lymphocytes. That's where they get involved. They enter into such a reaction, one passes on the information, the other receives it, aha, got it, and then it's like drones are launched, flying off to destroy the target. Specifically, these are the viral or bacterial agents that have entered our bodies.
Fascinating.
Why is all this necessary? Thanks to these macrophages, our body's first line of defense is established. This is where the initial contact with the foreign agent takes place. Surely you've experienced this. In a group, everyone eats the same thing. It would seem that some people get sick while others don't get sick at all, or someone recovers in just one day. They don't even have diarrhea, and that's it. They recover quickly. Meanwhile, someone else ends up with a prolonged, lingering illness. This suggests that the front lines of our immune system, which are located in our intestines, are not functioning properly. And so these very first plaques, these macrophages, simply can't cope with their job, because there are simply fewer of them, or they are demoralized by the enemy, by the large number of bacteria that have entered. So what's the right way to wash vegetables? With baking soda and salt. You make a baking soda and salt solution and wash them in it. So then you take some pot or basin, throw the vegetables in there, fill it with water, and dissolve baking soda and salt in it. Bananas are great. You don't even need to wash bananas at all. You just peel it carefully and eat it. As for cucumbers, tomatoes, and greens, no matter how healthy they are, you absolutely have to wash them. And it's best to wash them with baking soda and salt. The fifth secret: we don't absorb foods in their pure form, in other words, to get enzymes, vitamins, and amino acids. Everything we eat, it has to be processed by our bacteria and our enzymatic system. And only after that do we actually absorb these beneficial substances that are essential for our quality of life, for a quality life. If you put in poor quality fuel, then low quality bacteria will spread, which are not so friendly to us. Scientifically, they're called conditionally pathogenic or even outright pathogenic. The final product that gets absorbed into our body will be of poor quality. It will be harmful to our cells, and in general, overall for our body as a whole. Some journalist, I think, either Australian or Canadian, conducted such research, right? He went on a fast food diet for half a year or a year, and it led to his death. There really is such a case. By the way, I talk about which nutritional principles to follow, which foods you should definitely avoid, and which ones you need to add to your diet in my free masterclass. The link is below this video. And then you'll simply be young, energetic, and full of strength and vitality, just like I am at almost 50, just 7 years short. The sixth secret is that at birth, the human digestive tract is completely sterile. In other words, what does this mean? There isn't a single bacterium present, and these bacteria appear over time. The first exposure happens during passage through the birth canal. Among pediatricians, there's a term cesarean babies, meaning children born via cesarean section, and they typically have lower immunity. Because they did not go through all the stages of birth, in other words, they did not pass through the birth canal and did not acquire the bacteria they were supposed to get from their mother. And if these cesarean babies are then put on formula feeding, they are deprived of a huge amount, not only immune cells that they would get from their mother, but also the same beneficial bacteria that are present in breast milk, as well as overall interaction with the surrounding world. That's why it's so important for a child to be breastfed. And it's also important that the child is born naturally. Please write in the comments how you feel about cesarean sections. Are you for or against them? We'll definitely discuss this together. And now, the seventh secret. The hormone responsible for our happiness, called serotonin, is produced in our gut. 95% of serotonin is synthesized by so-called enterochromaffin cells in our gut. If a person suffers from constipation, they will be unhappy for several reasons. First, because they have physiological, biomechanical constipation, and second, because their enterochromaffin cells stop synthesizing serotonin properly. And then there are also the headaches that arise. Actually, I had an absolutely incredible case once. A woman suffered from headaches and this apathy, a lack of interest in life, for several years. Neurologists tried everything to treat her, antidepressants, all sorts of IV therapies, you name it. And she came to see me for a consultation. Actually, it was for some kind of orthopedic issue. From experience, I could tell she definitely had problems with her gastrointestinal tract, so I asked, "Do you have constipation?" We started working on her constipation, and as a result, her headaches disappeared. Her mood improved dramatically, and she completely changed and blossomed. So, a few weeks later, when she came to see me for a follow-up appointment, I didn't even recognize her at first. That is, we need to understand just how important it is to regulate the functioning of our gastrointestinal tract for the health of all our organs and systems. Because it is precisely from the GI tract, specifically from the intestines, that we get our energy. In other words, the intestines are directly linked to our immunity. The intestines are our energy, and the kind of fuel you put into yourself determines the kind of energy you get out.